what's going on in the setting and this time. So they want to meet. It's going to be fun. And he says that it was making him uneasy. He says, because again, he says, I had no intention of shooting it. I really wanted to use the rifle to defend myself in case the elephant charged. Right? But he says it was unnerving to have this crowd behind him. So you see this again, this fear, this pressure of he's on stage. He's a performer and he's got to perform. And he really underscores that idea when he talks about being a puppet here in a little bit, right? So he says, I'm marching up and down mountains. I feel like a fool. I got this rifle on my shoulder and all these people finding out at me. And he says, and I get to the elephant and he's peaceful. He's just eating grass. He doesn't look like he's a threat at all. And he says, in this paragraph right here, he says, I knew as soon as I saw him that there's no way I should have killed him. And so here he gives us some thoughts about why he isn't going to kill the elephant. And then back down in this paragraph on the next page, he also gives perfect reasons why he shouldn't kill it, right? So he's starting to have this debate within himself. We see this conflict. I know I shouldn't kill the elephant. I have no reason to it, but the Burmese want me to kill it and expect me to kill it, right? How is he going to resolve this conflict? What is he going to do to make this decision? This is a really important crux in the story. Right? So he tells us again, you can look at all the examples that he gives of why he shouldn't shoot it. And he says, and ultimately, I didn't want to shoot it. And he tells us it's not that I'm against hunting. I've been hunting. It's not that I was afraid of it. I just didn't think that was the right thing to do. But then he looks behind him and he sees 2,000 at least of these people behind him. And again, it's the sea of yellow faces above garish clothes. Excuse me. So again, the description of these people, right? And here is an important thing that I think is maybe something that's easy to overlook and not really think about the implications of it. But this next passage is important. He says, they were watching me as though they would watch a conjurer, so a magician, about to perform a trick. They did not like me, but with the magical rifle in my hands, I was momentarily worth watching, right? So the rifle isn't magic. Right? A rifle is a piece of technology. We know scientifically why the gun shoots the bullet and why it's destructive, right? So it's only magical to people who don't understand that technology. So by saying that they were looking at him because he had the magical rifle, he's again casting them as unsophisticated, uneducated, backwards, primitive, right? So again, we see some of that elitism kind of coming through here. And we're also seeing how he feels about himself, right? So again, first person narrative. How do we know this is what they were feeling as opposed to what he thinks they're feeling, because this is what he is really feeling. So he might be projecting this onto them. But he's saying that, for a moment, he kind of felt so powerful. And he says, I realized that I should have to shoot the elephant after all. The people expected it of me, and I had got to do it. So here is this idea of futility versus free will. He doesn't want to shoot it, but he feels like he has no choice. He has been put into this corner, and he must shoot it, right? And he says there, this is why this incident is so important. This is why it's enlightening. He says, it was this moment as I stood there with the rifle in my hands that I first grasped the hollowness, the futility of the white man's dominion in the East. So what he then tells us is that here he is, he's the white man, so he's superior. He has much greater knowledge, much more sophistication. He's got the gun, so he has more firepower, right? And yet, he realized that even in the middle of this unarmed crowd, and yeah, they're over 2,000, right? But still, who wants to be the one to take the bullet, right? In the middle of this crowd, he's the one with all the power, and yet he is actually powerless, right? He says, a hollow posing dummy. He calls himself a puppet. He says he's wearing a mask. And they're the ones who are really pulling his strings. He's not powerful at all, because this is what imperialism does, right? He says he must perform the job of the conventionalized sahib, right? Sahib is a word of respect that you got to figure. We're talking about irony. You got to figure that if the Burmese used the word sahib to white men, they weren't being really respectful. It was just all a show, right? But he says, I have a role to perform. My government has told me that I must always look like I'm correct. I cannot admit to error. I cannot ask for help. I always have to look like I'm in control. And in order to do that, I really have to do whatever the crowd wants me to do in order to maintain that facade. And that's why it's futile what they're doing, right? He says he realized that as soon as he had sent for the rifle, that determined what he was going to have to do, right? That was the moment of no return. He says a sahib has got to act like a sahib. He's got to appear resolute, to know his own mind and do definite things. So they weren't going to accept that he got the rifle just as a backup. As soon as he got the rifle, a sahib would have got it because he knew he was going to have to shoot that one, right? He says to come all this way, rifle in hand, with 2,000 people marching at my heels, and then to trail feebly away, having done nothing. No, that was impossible. The crowd would laugh at me, and my whole life, every white man's life in the East, was one long struggle not to be laughed at. Again, you have to be dignified. You have to be in control, right? If they laugh at you, they don't fear you. If they don't fear you, they will not follow your orders, right? Because they don't want you here, right? So again, he goes to this other, though, paragraph where he fights back against that. No, I don't. There's nothing about the elephant. He's not a threat, right? He says here, it would feel like it was murder to shoot him. That's pretty strong, right? And then he thinks about the mahout. I mean, this elephant is this guy's livelihood, right? So, he's going to be taking that away from him. So he does reflect, I think, this idea that he does sympathize with the Burmese. He does care about them. But he cares about something more than that. He cares about his own self, right? And